Uh, I'm getting sick and I'm kind of tired, so this is probably going to be even more rambly than I had planned. And I'm going to tell you right now that the way I designed this talk was going through my professor's binder of slides and taking things that I thought were interesting. And so it's kind of disconnected, but the first part is just me showing you the few weird, not what a professor would probably show you if they wanted you to come up with good stuff for your exams, but some weird highlights in the evolution of Greek art. And then, if there's time and interest, I'll show you some stuff online from the excavation I did last summer. Anyway, so here we are. This is a Greek vase from the Bronze Age, which is the period of Greek history, of Mediterranean history, really, about which we don't really know anything because there's no textual sources, which ended in around the 11th century BC. So this thing here is over 3,000 years old. And for some reason, they like to decorate their pots with octopi, because they're delicious and tasty. And by the way, when I was in Greece the first time, we had food at this tasty restaurant, and we got octopus, and it's delicious. And the dude's secret for preparing his octopus is that you have to take it and whack it against the ground 100 times to soften it before you start boiling it. So if you guys ever make octopus, bash it against the ground a bunch of times. Anyway, then the 11th century happens, and for some reason the Bronze Age civilizations of the Mediterranean all collapse, and it's this whole big calamity. People make a big deal out of it, blah, 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 blah. Greek pottery starts sucking for a couple hundred years. But then, in the 8th century in Athens, we get cool stuff like this again. And this is actually an atypical piece. This is from the period called Proto-Geometric. So this is probably from the 9th or the 8th century or something, I don't remember exactly what specialists would tell you. But this is weird because it actually has not just these geometrical patterns, like the cool wavy lines and stuff, but also a horse, which makes it one of the earliest depictions of a figural scene of any kind in Greek art. And this is from a place in Athens called the Kerameikos, which was used as sort of a cemetery at this point in time. And the horse is relevant because horses in Greek culture, especially during the Archaic period, were extremely rare, and so they were a symbol of the elite, kind of like a BMW or a Ferrari or something now. And so this is kind of like, putting a BMW on your tombstone or something to advertise how rich you were, something like that. Anyway, then we move on, and we get to the mid and late geometric periods, and then the whole vase sort of gets covered in these crazy ass designs like this. Practically every available surface has these geometric designs, hence the name, the geometric period. You can't really tell because the slide is kind of too small, but there are incredibly intricate designs on the upper part just below the neck. It's pretty cool. Anyway, then time goes on. We get some more, even crazier. Now the entire thing is closely decorated instead of having a few of these big patches of not much. And also you'll see that we have a funeral scene here. This is from the late 8th century probably. And here's a close-up of that scene, showing mourners and the horizontal guys being buried and shit like that. By the way, if you guys have any questions, you can just throw it whenever you want. It's pretty much just rambling. Anyway, and so this is a kind of vessel called a crater, or a crater, which Greeks put over the tombs of dead men. Women have a different kind of shape. This is a crater for men. And so it's interesting because this is actually the earliest known major sort of narrative scene in Greek vase painting. There are things like this horse from before, but not very many, and that's pretty much just a horse, whereas this is an actual scene. And the place it's from, I said, is the Karamayakos, and I just have a few photos of it for no particular reason, but it's cool and I like it. So this here, you can't probably tell, but you'll have to take my word for it, is a fork in the road. So down at the bottom half of the picture is a road leading directly into Athens. So we're facing away from the city center here. And off on the left, where those people are, is a place called the Street of the Tombs, where lots of rich people got buried and had sweet decorations for their tombs like these. These are just casts, the originals are in the museum. But, so these are like grave stelae. You'll note, interestingly, that the one on the right has a relief carving of a vase on it. You all see what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so that's from like the early 4th century, probably. And it's cool because this sort of thing, 7th century, becomes a carving on a stone by the 4th century, like this. Here's just another shot of the Karamayakos. This actually is a Bronze Age burial mound, like not the wall part, but the big mound behind it. And here's just a shot of the city walls. Anyway, back to the vases. Time goes on, we get more intricate, more elaborate decorative scenes. This is from the mid-7th century from Eleusis, which is like just north of Athens, about 20 or 30 kilometers away. And does anybody know what, well, I guess you can't really tell me. Does anybody know what scene this is? Anyone? No, that's too much. All right, well, anyway, it's the blinding, I'm sorry there's not like a better shot showing the actual important part, but it's Odysseus and his companions blinding the Cyclops, Polyphemus. I'm sorry, I should have gotten a better slide, but over on the very right part that's visible on the lip, the big black shape is the Cyclops, and the guy who's like kind of weirdly in white for some reason is Odysseus, and they're holding like their spear, which you can see at the top there, sort of subsumed into like the decoration. And so this is obviously like a pretty big step forward at that. I don't get it, but anyway, this is a big step forward in terms of like showing narrative scenes that are, you know, naturalistic and stuff. Time goes on, we get yet more detailed things. You know, this is from southern Italy somewhere. And so it's kind of like this weird merger of an Eastern Greek technique called the wild goat style, where they depict wild goats. And that's on the very bottommost register. And like narrative scenes in the upper one. I don't actually know exactly what they're showing, but it's cool. But anyway, what most people think of when they think of Greek face painting is probably Athenian black figure, and even more Athenian red figure. And so that's what the next several slides are about. Starting around the beginning of the 6th century in Athens, a technique of decorating vases comes about called black figure. And you can see that the reason it's called black figure is because the figures are black as opposed to red. And to explain why this is, I need to tell you a little bit about how the Athenians make their vases, which is actually an interesting topic that I'm not like an expert in or anything. But basically, the way it works is the red here and the black aren't like, it's not like one of them is paint and the other one isn't. They're both clay, but for some reason, they had like 2 different kinds of clay, and so they would make a pot, and then they would paint the parts of it that they wanted to be, oh, actually I don't quite remember whether it's the parts that they want to be black or the parts that they want to be red, but we'll just say it's the parts they want to be black, because that's easier. And so then they would bake it in an airtight kiln that was an atmosphere that no more oxygen could get into, and that turned the whole thing black. And then in a second term of firing, they would like open some valves and oxygen would rush in, which like changes the dynamics of the fire and like one part of the clay gets oxidized and the other one doesn't. And so that's how the black and the red comes about. It's not